get out of bed in the morning. No one at work really understands what I'm good at. I need to get out of here. Or are you a 10? I love my job. I'm really in the position that makes the most sense for me. I get to use my strengths most of the time. And even if I wasn't getting paid, I'd probably want to do exactly this. So I invite you to decide in your mind what your number is and hold that in your head today. And as we're sharing with you our stories and the ideas behind living and working from a strengths-based approach, we're hoping you'll get some ideas of how you can ratchet that number up for yourself. I'm really fortunate to say that most of the time I'm a 10. And not every day is perfect, but by and large, I find ways to use my strengths pretty regularly. And when a particular task presents itself that demands one of my weaknesses, I have strategies using my strengths of how to work around that weakness. And I'm going to illustrate some of those points for you today. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and how I ended up here today. And in some ways, it started when I was a preteen. When I was in middle school, I had this nifty banana seat bike. And I would hop on that banana seat bike at least once a week and ride to our little local community library. And I would always check out 2 Nancy Drew mysteries and a self-help book. So from really early on, I was really interested in positive psychology. But essentially my adult professional strength journey started when I received a phone call a number of years ago. There I was, not very far from here, in my pretty nice executive corporate office. And I had a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-month-old, and an impending move to London with my husband and his job. And I was the woman who thought she could have it all. If I worked really hard, really used my work ethic strength, I could have a successful career, happy family, good marriage, lots of good friends, etc. And I got a phone call one day, and it was from my cousin Kathy, who, like me, was in her late 30s. And she called to tell me that her sister Kelly and her sister Eileen both had just been diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer. And the story was positive from the standpoint that their prognosis was good, they had good care, they had each other. Just wanted to make you aware, Colleen. And there I was, right, the one who thought she could have it all. And I thought, maybe I should do a self-breast exam when I go home tonight. Well, fast forward to less than 24 hours later, I was with the breast cancer surgeon who said to me, "I'm sorry, Colleen, you have stage 3 breast cancer, and it has spread to your lymph nodes, and we're going to do everything that we can." And I'm very blessed to be standing up here in front of you today to tell you that story, because it happened a number of years ago. I faced multiple surgeries, chemotherapy, and radiation, and I am sure to my core that the overuse of some of my strengths and the use of some of my draining strengths had at least something to do with that situation. And I've made quite a few changes in my life since then. And I hope that none of you have ever had anything like that happen to you. But I also hope that based on what you hear us talk about today, you get some clues as to how you can use your strengths to stay strong, to manage a work-life balance, to deal with those colleagues of yours that are driving you crazy sometimes. And we're going to share some of that with you today. So I need to start with, well, what is a strength? So a strength is something that all of you have, many of them. You perform it well, you get a lot of energy from using it, and you use it frequently. And we have several different kinds of strengths. And all of you have a handout on your chair. I invite you to look at that as I'm talking to you. In the upper right quadrant is the definition of a realized strength. So you all have a realized strength. Realized strength is something you perform well, you get a lot of energy from using, and you use frequently. And our realized strengths are essentially our common sense lens on the world, and are the tools in our toolkit that we pull out most frequently. And most of the time, our realized strengths serve us really well. But occasionally, we run the risk of overusing or misusing our realized strengths simply because it feels really right to be using those tools in our toolkit. So our goal with our realized strengths is to try and marshal their use. And by marshal, I mean to be aware of when you might be overusing or misusing it. When you're creating barriers for yourself because you're using these tools too much. Or you're creating interpersonal conflict with someone else because you're realizing your strengths too much. And on the back of that page is a place where it says, what are your strengths? And I would invite you, as you're hearing me talk about my strengths and the panelists talk about their strengths, to write down your strengths and begin to create your toolkit so some of these concepts that we're talking about, you can think about how to internalize them for yourself. So you all have realized strengths. You also all have unrealized strengths, the upper left quadrant of that chart you see. An unrealized strength is a strength you have, you perform well, you get energy from using, but you're not using it as much for whatever reasons. The context might not be right. So our goal with our unrealized strengths is simply to try and find ways to maximize those. So I invite you to think about, what are your unrealized strengths? If you have ideas, jot them down. In the bottom right of that quadrant is the definition of a learned behavior. So we all have learned behaviors. And learned behaviors are essentially your draining strengths. So we all have strengths that give us energy, like our realized and unrealized strengths. And we all also have strengths that no matter how many times someone says, you're so good at that, pat on the back, pay raise, more responsibility. You're like, oh, I don't like doing that kind of stuff. And those are your draining strengths. So our goal with those is to try and moderate their use, to not be as dependent on those strengths of ours if we can. And we're going to talk about, with my illustration, how to do that. And then lastly, we all have weaknesses. Simply, we're not good at certain things, and even if we were, we don't really enjoy it. So our goal with our weaknesses is to be aware of them, right? To know if they're manifesting themselves negatively, making you vulnerable in some way, and if they are, then figuring out with your strengths, how can you work around that? And I'm going to share my strengths profile and give you some ideas. So you turn your eye to the bottom of the page. Full disclosure, you see my strengths right there. So the upper right quadrant, you see the very first strength up there is work ethic. I have a tireless work ethic. I get tremendous amount of energy from this realized strength of working late and working hard. And as you might well imagine, I can overuse that work ethic. And when my alarm clock goes off at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to take my daughter to the bus after midnight, 12:30, 1 a.m., and I'm working because I love to check things off my list. It makes me feel so energized to work really hard, but I know I overuse my work ethic. You also see on my list here, enabler, steam builder, service. To me, there's absolutely nothing more fulfilling to me personally, thinking about my strengths, than to sit with someone one-on-one in one of my executive coaching situations and help that person come up with ideas to solve their problems or to overcome some challenge in their life, seize opportunities. And if I can help them feel confident leaving me, that's a great opportunity for me to use several of my strengths at one time. And you see order on my list of realized strengths. So I'm the person who cannot go to bed at night with dishes in the sink. I can't leave this morning in a bit of a hurry to get here to this conference with my bed unmade. I just feel so much more energized when I realize my strength of order. In the bottom right, you see my learned behaviors. So I mentioned learned behaviors are our draining strengths. I'm going to call your attention to two of my draining strengths. Get you to think about, what are your draining strengths? So two of mine are planful and reconfiguration. So that means I'm good at, get drained by it, but I'm good at planning. I'm good at reconfiguring, things change, how can I reorder things to make sure that we're marching in the right direction. And those strengths have served me well, but they've also drained me. So I made mention, of course, of my breast cancer scenario. right after that happened, when I was given the second chapter, another opportunity, I decided I needed to make some pretty big changes in my career. Because I was successful, I liked what I was doing, but I was doing a lot of planning and reconfiguring. And so I made a shift out of the corporate life into a job where I could be doing mostly enabling, esteem building service. I love what I do. Another example of planful reconfiguration is two learned behaviors. So I made mention that I had an impending move to London when I was diagnosed with cancer. Well, it didn't happen at that time for obvious reasons. Fast forward to about 7 years later, and it came up again. So I guess it was in the cards, meant to be. But at that time, I had 4 children, 2 older ones going into high school, kicking and screaming, as you might well imagine. Why are we moving away from Boston into London, of all places, far away, my friends? And I spent my entire first year in that planful and reconfiguration mode, right? Trying to find the Cheerios, the dry cleaners, my way around driving on the wrong side of the road to play dates, etc. And I'd given up my career. But as soon as I started thinking about, I was miserable. You know, how can I get myself back again? As soon as I started working again, rebuilding my business in that country, finding clients I could enable, esteem build, service, authentic, happy, energized Colleen was back again. My weaknesses, I highlight 1, courage. So as you might well imagine, it takes a fair amount of courage to be standing up here talking to all of you. And courage is one of my weaknesses. So what do I have to do before I come here today and think, all right, this is not about facing my fears. It's about enabling all of you, hopefully building your esteem, servicing you. And if I can redefine, sort of reshape, refocus, or smother that courage with my strengths, which all of you can do, you can smother or partner your weaknesses with some of your strengths, then you stand a much better chance of being successful and energized. Because we all, from time to time, have to work around our weaknesses. And then lastly, I call your attention to my unrealized strengths. So you see on that list, mission, which is really all about wanting to have a life of purpose and doing things that are really important and valued. Staying centered, trying to be zen. And as I think about 2016, I know that if I realize my strength and centered, if I stick with my Headspace meditation app that has been kind of put in the back burner the last few weeks, busy with the holidays, or I stick with my yoga class that I've not been doing regularly, then I'm going to feel much more successful, happy, energized, stressed less, etc. I need to realize my centered strength. And if I find more opportunities like this to speak, where I'm doing things that are purposeful and meaningful, I'll fulfill that mission strength. So that is my strength profile. Hopefully that you have thought about what your strengths might be in each of those different quadrants as you heard me talk. On the back of that page is information, which I'm happy to answer questions at the end, about how you find out your strengths, different tools you can use. I love one called the R2 Strengths Profiler, which is what I use to talk today, what the panelists use. And just in closing, before I invite the group up here, I want to read to you a quote, which, given that I'm a self-help junkie, I think sort of sums it up. This is from Alex Linley, who is the CEO of a UK organization, that tool with all the unusual spellings, like behaviors and centered, is a UK tool. And Alex is the CEO of that company. And he says, when people understand the impact and significance of working from their strengths, the shift is huge. And once the realization is there, it cannot be reversed, and the change has begun. I invite all of you today, hopefully, to really think hard about what your strengths are. I hope you all leave here today with some fire in your belly and a curiosity of what are my strengths? I need to figure them out. And just to illustrate more of this way of thinking, how to use it in your career, I'm going to invite Frederick and the panel to come up and share more about strengths. Thank you.